Hello, everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, the moral of the story. The guard leading me into the room gives a hard yank on the chain. Pain lances through my neck, and I snarl, baring my impressive fangs for full effect. He shies away, naked fear on his face, before remembering which of us is supposed to be the prisoner. "Watch it, mutt, or you'll be drinking out of the toilet through a wired jaw," he says, his tough guy tone betrayed by the quaver in his voice and the stink of fear in his scent. I snort in contempt. "Oh, please, CO. We both know who's afraid of the big bad wolf." His expression hardens, mouth tightening into a white line. One hand drops to the baton sheathed at his waist. "That will do, officer," a new voice says. "I'll ask you to do your job without further violating my client's civil rights." I look past the guard and his impotent rage to see a man sitting at the lone table in the room. The space is dimly lit, a single flickering fluorescent bulb recessed in the ceiling behind a grating. But I've got good eyesight. The guy's so short his legs barely clear the edge of the chair. I take in his expensive suit, immaculately groomed hair, and a face so wrinkled and wizened it looks like a prune staked out in the desert for a week. He smells of cologne, silk, a hint of moldy straw, and... That's curious. No fear. Not a hint of that very familiar scent. Interesting. That must mean he's either stupid or a villain. Like me. The guard secures my chain to a ring on the floor, giving me just enough play to reach my side of the table, then snaps a padlock on it with a loud click. He then steps back to stand against the wall. The short man's eyes, small, dark, and hard behind wire-rimmed glasses, flick to the guard. "Leave me alone with my client, if you please." "Not a good idea, buddy," the guard says, glancing at me. "You know who this is, right?" "Of course I do," the man snaps. "I also know the privileges that exist between the accused and his legal representation. Now, must I ask again?" The guard scowls, shakes his head, and leaves, slamming the door shut behind him. The lock on the door clicks loudly, too. I casually stretch as much as I can with the chain and collar, give a shake to fluff out my thick gray fur. "Client, eh? Funny, I don't remember hiring a lawyer." The faintest of smiles ghosts across the man's face. "You haven't, yet. But I'm certain you'll want to retain my services after you hear what I have to say." "Why's that?" I ask in the most bored tone I can manage. "Because I can make sure that you don't spend the rest of your life behind bars." I can't help it. My ears prick up at that. I force a derisive snort. "Not likely. They have a pretty good case against me." "And that is precisely why you want me to represent you." A positively oily grin stretches his lips. "Allow me to introduce myself." Two fingers extend to place a business card on the table between us. I glance down at it. Mr. R, attorney at law, specialist in defense of the wrongly accused. The black letters stand out against the crisp white, cutting across a spinning wheel picked out in gold foil. Yeah, it's a dead giveaway. Mr. Ray, that'd be short for... He raises a small hand to stop me before I can say it. "I would prefer if we kept this from being a first-name relationship." Yellowed teeth glint as he grins again. "Okay, I say with a flick of an ear. Lawyer now, huh? Previous line of work didn't suit you? Let's just say that it was far too labor-intensive. I find my new career to be much more rewarding. It also didn't require much of an adjustment, ethically speaking. So, Mr. R, it is for now. For that matter, what would you like me to call you? I shrug, a human gesture I've perfected over the years. Most people just scream wolf and run away when they see me. I see. Then I shall address you as Mr. Wolf, for simplicity's sake. Whatever. Now, Mr. R settles himself in his hard wooden chair. I'm familiar with the particulars of your case, Mr. Wolf, at least those that have been made publicly available, but perhaps you'd like to tell me your side of the story. Now I actually laugh. My side of the story? Not a lot of people are interested in that. As far as most of them are concerned, there's only ever one side. The one where I'm the villain, just out to do villain things. It's just how the story goes. So you don't deny the charges? Well now, Mr. R, that'd be telling, wouldn't it? I may be facing the headsman's axe or life in a cage, but I don't see any reason to make it easier on everyone. Mr. Wolf, we in the legal profession are required to keep our clients' confidence and cannot be compelled to reveal what is told us in confidence. Okay. Whether he's telling the truth or not, I find I just don't care. Well, yeah, I did it. Whatever they say, I did it all. Mr. R removes his glasses, pulls out a kerchief, and starts polishing the lenses. You stalked young Peter and his friends and attempted to murder a duck, I believe. I pretend to wince. Yeah, got so close, but she was just that lucky. I sigh. I can still taste feathers. And you destroyed the property of 3 industrious pigs? Hey, not my fault if their houses weren't up to code. Of course, then they tried to burn me alive. Lost a lot of fur on that one. Then you actually consumed a young lady and her grandmother? I give a little laugh. And the grandmother's cat. Not too many people remember that part. But I kinda missed out on the satisfaction of a good meal in the end. After I woke up on the riverbank, went through 3 surgeries to get all the rocks out of my belly, and spent 6 months in that stupid plastic cone. Well, let's just say that a certain woodsman is next on the menu if I ever get out of here. Mr. R finishes cleaning his glasses, sets them back in place, all without batting an eye. I see. So, you are guilty, and I must assume that the police have all the evidence they need, since you are sitting here before me, chained to the floor. I pull back my lips in a grin, or a snarl. Hard for me to tell the difference when I'm doing it. Like I said, I'm the villain. I do bad things. No matter how the story goes, that's always how it ends. It's the... what do they call it? The moral. That's right, the moral of the story. Bad people do bad things. Mr. R arches one scraggly eyebrow. What if I told you the story doesn't have to end that way? I cock my head to one side. How's that? Mr. Wolf, my job doesn't necessarily consist of proving you innocent, Mr. R says. Not when I can make you into a victim instead of a villain. Say what? That's right, Mr. Wolf. Instead of making this about your crime, we can make it about you. We'll play up your tragic past, your difficult upbringing. Why, you said it yourself. People look at you and see nothing more than a scary animal. That's prejudice. It's colored your entire life, hasn't it? Is all I managed to get out in reply. Honestly, I'd never thought about it like that. Do you have a mate? Mr. R asks suddenly. Pups? A pack that relies on you? Needs you? What? No, nothing like that. I give my head a shake, trying to wrap my head around all this. Are you saying that you can make it look like I was the victim instead of the villain? Exactly, Mr. Wolf. Now his grin looks positively evil. We'll put you in front of the cameras, paint you a tragic victim of circumstances and biases. All that's required is the right spin on the facts. And believe me, Mr. Wolf, I know how to put the right spin on things. No doubt. All of this is confusing and, well, kinda disgusting. Look, why go through all that? Just post my bail and I'll skip town, how about? I'm only half joking. Again, he arches that eyebrow. To go on the run? To be hunted and hounded the rest of your life? Now I grin. I'm the big bad wolf, remember? What you just described, that's my normal. It doesn't have to be, says Mr. R. When I'm through, you'll spend a few months in prison, after which you'll be set up for life. A comfortable den, plenty of game to hunt. Even your own woods if you want. No one will dare bother you again. With enough positive media coverage, I can work out a very favorable deal for you. Deals are something of a specialty for me. Now, how's that sound? I stare at him, narrowing my eyes. What do you get out of this, Mr. Ray? Something tells me you're not doing it out of the kindness of your heart. He gives a short laugh. Oh, goodness, no. You see, in the process of rewriting the narrative, there will be interviews, televised appearances, at least one book deal. That means money, Mr. Wolf. Rather a lot of money. His oily grin reappears, and I get 50%. Oh, now that's disgusting. Sickening. He wants me to lie about what I am, pretend to be something I'm not. A victim. A weak, pathetic, mewling victim. And also he can exploit my villainy for cash. I don't know, I say. It all sounds like a big lie to me. And you've never lied before? Something about his tone of voice, so cocky and superior, makes my hackles rise, literally. I seem to recall one of the charges is impersonating a little old lady. That's rather dishonest, don't you think? I growl deep in my throat. I like to think of it as deceptive. A predator has to be cunning after all. Indeed. Come now, Mr. Wolf. Let's stop bandying words. He lifts a briefcase onto the table, snaps it open, and produces a gold fountain pen with a flourish. You just sign these documents, and I'll get started turning you into the tragic victim. A victim. Me. I'm a villain. I made the choices that made me a villain. And to be honest, I never really regretted it until I got caught. If not for that woodsman, I'd still be out there, stalking Peter and his friends, blowing down pigs' houses, and looking for my next little Red Riding Hood. But then, look where being the villain has gotten me. In this room, with a scumbag who wants me to lie, tell people a sob story, deny what I am, just so I won't be punished for the wrong I've done, and he can make a lot of money. I think Mr. R is a worse villain than I am, and he's definitely not the kind of villain I want to be. Now let's get this straightened out, I say, the words coming out from behind bared fangs. I'm a villain. I know I'm a villain. I own that. I'd rather just accept that I've done wrong and take what I've got coming. Mr. R purses his lips like he's tasted something really sour. Mr. Wolf, please be reasonable. I think you'd better get out of here, Mr. R, before I start naming names, or I could just gobble you up. Your pick. Mr. Wolf, I lunge forward, straining the chain to its limits. Planting my forepaws on the table, I let out a savage bark, jaws snapping, spattering drool all over Mr. R's nice suit and shiny glasses. He lurches backwards, tumbling out of the chair, briefcase and pen flying across the room. A second later, he scrambles back to his feet, staring at me, eyes wide, and darts for the door. Now I smell it. The fear. Its stink is thick and rank. I guess he really isn't stupid. With one hand on the doorknob, he pauses, glancing back at me. You know they will never stop seeing you as a villain. They will hunt and persecute you, no matter what you do. Maybe so, I reply, suddenly tired of this whole thing. But maybe I've earned that. Maybe if I want that to change, I need to show them that I can change too. I shrug. So even though I'm the villain in this story, maybe I can still do the right thing. Maybe that's the moral of the story. When I read Beckett, in this room, cursed room, loved, cursed, where she slept, half-grown in her hometown t-shirt, shorts, no shorts, t-shirt worn with holes, on the floor, he having thrown it, under the bed, dust collected and swept and settled again, and again. Who? He. Not she. Gracious. There for the first time. Assuredly last time. No boys in the room, father said. Keep out. Nodded her head. But in the room, blue light hugging the window, scotch tape, peeling off the paint whether chipped or freshly laid or exhumed. He found her in the... No, not found. Held her in, under doomed blankets. A thumb. Under a thumb. Twisted under a thumb. Urgently. Unabashedly. Shackled by his name. No name. Names unknown. 2 in the bed. 1. World flaring by. Unedited film chopped and hacked. A sore thing. Ulcers blooming somewhere. Holes in her memory. In her body. Hush now. But the slicing. Hush, I say. Feeling her own atomic skeleton. So quickly destroyed. So quickly defiled. So quickly filled. It might serve to relax. Dissociate. But incapable. Already unaware. The girl. But the girl. Remember what? Remember the party. Supposed to be where? With whom? Taken home. Taken home with. She left the house. In the evening. Bottles on the porch. Tequila stinging chapped mouths. He pours, and pours, and pours, and pours, and disappears. A spoon of sugar in a wet glass. Moon casts a shadow. Bloody crescent. Stray sequins scratch her shins. They flake off. She is whisked away. Smells distilled. The party. What party? The secret of where it is, where it was. Must have been. Seen by people scantily dressed. A stain on the night. She wore. The idea of what she wore. Received poorly. With exhilaration. Noted. Clicked. Recorded and frozen forever as she was. Those flashes. Bright in her eyes. Phone cameras glinting. Periphery irritated. Some kind of no man's land. Couldn't breathe. Too hot. Couldn't hear her voice. Escape. Wanting it all to fade to black. Anywhere else but here. So leave. Leave. Let out into vapor. Where did she go? Seen? By anyone? Taken home. Taken. Transported. Goods handled. Express shipping for dolls. Laid to rest in a bed of bubble wrap. Resting. In bed. Then. A stranger. No. Not a stranger. Couldn't be a stranger. To know her bed. In her room. Been in her room before. But father said no. Yet, so-called friend. Always easily trusted. Hand on her lower back. Her sentences half finished. Since days with Velcro shoes. There like a mole. Constant. Dependable. Then he. Then swam in her mouth. Syllables of his name. They're in her teeth. to be scooped out by dental floss, stuck, tip of her tongue, his finger on her pocked tongue, a moment of gagged silence. Lips form sounds learned in primary school. Not a scream. Some sounds, vowels from when she was small, and the words tasted new. Like a finger, a thumb. No, like English, children who knew the flavor. But she, the bitterness, she, muffled sounds in play and muffled sounds, out of touch. English more like aspic to her, at the time, at that point. But somehow she found, but one universal language in hands and dirt under fingernails. Fingernails on skin, raking on skin, touches, sticking to drool, dirty kisses on monkey bars, language of friendship. A friend who understood her warped words, English forgotten, shoulder by shoulder, kisses with friends, wood chips licking open shoes, pigtails on her head with the little bows, and she forced herself to smile, yanked by the ends, tickled by the belly, touched. Little boys, being boys. She did not realize, long before parties, she did not realize, laying in the bed, pigtails long gone, gone where? Time spilled over from a cup, splaying. No, spreading. On the duvet, uncovered. But why? The thought of, at the party, or rather, God. Zippers undone, knots untied, laces in her shoes, unlaced. Command strips flayed from a mirror shattered on the floor. Cut feet in the morning, spliced. She struggles, finds herself out of herself. Second of incomprehension. Hours, spanning hours, erased and unnoticed by a blink. Gosh, but her mind, a washing of sorts, reckoning with punishment, lack of evidence, guilty, punishment, guilt in a sealed box open only to her, vanished memory, insufficient evidence, inadmissible, poured out in measured shots. Now love is an apparition in the wall, friendship buried in a shallow grave, unseen, slipping through a groping fist, strange fist groping at her native tongue resurfaces, from the cradle, from mother's milk, forming sounds like no, foreigners deaf to no, adequately expressed. Speak English. But she can't. She can't. Gibberish garbled in her throat, congealed from the inside. Speak. Error. Speak. Error. Suddenly. Indubitably. He. Unadmitted. Swine. Door left unlocked, having forgotten to lock. Brought her home without keys. Carried on his shoulder. A friend. Helping hand. By a friend. Since she met him. Day one. Fat black eyes, dirty handshake. Playgrounds. Those same pigtails sinuous in his fingers. Friendship. Firm. Invitations to places. Introductions to people. Been in her room before. Some cousins to know of. Mario Kart in his basement. Pizza on trampoline forts. Sharing generously. Growing new body parts. Sheltered. Without doubt. Certainly not. How could she, not to see it coming? A girl and a boy, together, as friends, not to trail the wicked scent. Perhaps unassuming, perhaps mistaken, unaware, naive, guilty, secretly wanting, once or twice a flirt, in sobriety dripping with meaning. He reads, pours tequila into shot glasses. Her language stinks of filth to interpret as, in that tight skirt, combinations of, stop right there. Can it? When it comes down to it, guilty, 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 there in her body, there in her hands, and the cameras, a still life, friends seeing it happen, seeing it all happen, indelible. The guilty party? Fine, let it be this way. Crumbs for the world, chewed on in daylight. School hallways chattering like shivering teeth. Goosebumps. Her flesh, feed the hungry. Fed to friends. He, notches in his ribs. On her. Grating. Somewhere in the room. But she can't speak. Can't see. On the desk somewhere. A hairbrush. A stone. To fight with. Fight back. She can't move. Fight back. And hurt a friend. How the story goes. Pitched in the courtroom. Self-defense. When Judgment Day comes. And if it comes, who protects friends? She. Language unserving. There in her body. There in her hands. There in her body. There in her hands. A friend. And she says nothing. Does nothing. In this room. In liability and lingato. When the police forcibly entered 43-year-old Paulina Fiore's apartment, they found her lifeless body on the floor of the kitchen, covered in mysterious bruises. The lead detective immediately suspected homicide and ordered an autopsy. But after extensive analysis, the coroner concluded the cause of death was vitamin C deficiency. In a video appearing on social media, Stephanie Brolo, who sources confirm is a close friend of Paulina, is seen weeping and uttering, "This is all my fault." At the offices of my city's largest newspaper, I sip my third espresso of the morning and finish writing the story. 1 coffee per story is a good rule to live by. I wish I could teach this to new journalists, but they have their own ways of doing things. After I finish my third random fatality write-up of the morning, I announce, I'm sick of tabloid journalism, to the newsroom, to no one in particular. The young writers around me ignore me. In the economic downturn in traditional media, they are happy to simply hold a job. Giuseppe, our new chief editor, says articles with a topic of either sex or death receive 10 times more clicks than any other. The editorial concepts in his head are as blunt as the sales method of a fish seller in the market. I need to endure another month of ambulance chasing until I can focus on another piece of investigative journalism. My lengthy expose of government corruption last month, which filled half the front page of the print edition, received fewer views online than a weekend car crash or a nightclub brawl. Max? Giuseppe is standing in front of my desk. Why haven't you interviewed the friend yet? Friend? Friend of whom? Idiot. The "it's all my fault" friend. Young, attractive, trending online. Giuseppe says this with his voice rising in volume for each word. Stephanie Brolo. I show Giuseppe my memory, for detail is flawless. I didn't study political science to chase after friends of murder victims and suicides. Do it. He turns around and stomps off. Halfway across the newsroom, he turns back and shouts, Vitamin C. Focus on the vitamin C. Nutrition stories are good for our advertisers, Max. Several reporters type notes into their mobiles. Even an untrained eye can foresee them proposing all types of vitamin stories in tomorrow's news meeting. I dial the friend. This is Max Serafino. Is this Bianca? Yes, a female voice says, and hesitates. Are you with the police? Number, I'm with the... I say the name of the newspaper. With a 137-year history, the name often opens doors. I thought the police would be the first to call. What do you want? The police in Italy would never bother with something as trivial as a comment on social media, unless a politician or celebrity was involved. I'd like to clarify what you said in the viral video on Italia app. I mention Italy's largest social media app. That video is ruining my life, Bianca says. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, everyone misunderstood what I said. I didn't have anything to do with Paulina's death. She stopped going out and looked thinner 6 months ago. Maybe I started her in this direction. She catches her breath. I only called her twice after she stopped seeing me. I should have tried harder, gone to her home. Yes? It's all too much, she says. Thanks for calling me, but sorry. I don't know who you are. Abruptly, the mobile screen turns red. She disconnects the WhatsApp call and goes offline. Good work on the Paulina interview. Giuseppe reaches over and picks up one of my antique pencils and massages it between his fingers. No problem, boss. I managed to knit the meager information I was given into a piece about a heartbroken friend and a substantial essay about eating disorders. Nice pencil. He studies the Castelli wooden pencil quixotically. Max, you are 10 years too old for this newsroom, but you are a cat that always lands on its feet. The Tiger of Turin, I propose. I'll accept that as a byline. An important-sounding moniker is the best I can hope for these days. I recall the Elysian days of being flown to Rome to interview government ministers, back when traditional newspapers collected all the advertising revenue instead of Google. When assigned a story, one of the first duties a beat reporter checks off is to contact the family members. I locate Paulina's father on social media and send an introduction. This is Max Serafino, a reporter with the Turin Register. I'm writing an article about the unfortunate incident with your daughter and would like to ensure I have all details correct. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. I receive a reply, which appears to be copied and pasted. We have nothing to say. Do not contact us again. The Fiore family. I move on to another breaking story, and the Paulina story goes quiet in the newsroom of the Turin Register for several days. Max, line 7! Someone shouts. I answer. City desk, Max Serafino. This is Paulina Fiore's father, a man says. Our daughter. It's all our fault. We saw how much time she was spending on her mobile and never stopped her. I'm sure it's not your fault, but I would like to hear more, I say. Is there a reason you decided to call me today? The police unlocked her phone and asked us questions about the websites she was looking at. Do you remember any of the names? I don't know. I've never heard of any of them, he said. But most of the articles were about diseases. Was she in contact with anyone? They did say she received the links from friends on the Italia app. Judging by reports from neighbors, Paulina has not been outside for months. The friends must be online ones. I call Professor Rizzo at the University of Turin. Could fear about disease, viruses, and bacteria, and so on, cause a patient to suffer from malnutrition? I ask. Mysophobia, commonly called germophobia, can cause a patient to avoid touching food, to eat with gloves, that sort of thing. In problem cases, it may cause patients to limit social interaction and avoid public places. Paulina appeared to be living on a diet of boiled pasta. That sounds possible, but I've never heard of malnutrition even in the most extreme cases of mysophobia. Hunger, including a desire for a mixed diet, is stronger than almost any other psychological urge. But isn't the urge to survive even stronger? I conjecture, trying to imagine what the existential threat could be. How could Paulina completely avoid something so widespread as vitamin C? I update the chief editor on my progress on the case. This has the workings of a good human interest story: food, fear, a female victim. Giuseppe looks satisfied. Keep digging, but steer clear from anything negative about Italia app. They deliver 30% of our incoming traffic. I am on speaking terms with many people in our city. People love to talk about themselves to someone who is actively listening, especially if they perceive them to be in a position of authority. After graduating university together, Bruno went on a different, more international path than I. Having worked for 15 years in Silicon Valley, he returned to our hometown and was soon snapped up by Italy's largest social media company. A glimpse at a life I could have lived. I canceled dinner with my girlfriend Gabriel to set up a cozy dinner with a 41-year-old man. On a clear, dry evening as dusk descends over Turin, as it sits in its valley between the towering Italian Alps on one side and the rolling hills that rise up from the Po River on the other, I walk toward the rectangular bulk of iron lattice that is the old Fiat factory in Lingotto on the south side of the city. The factory, almost a kilometer long, has transformed into offices and a ground-floor shopping mall. Now it's popular with high-tech startups, many from America, France, and Germany. The building that was the epicenter of the city when Turin produced half the automobiles of Europe is now filled with people trying to figure out how to sell discount handbags through e-commerce. At least the people of Turin are no longer destined for a life of hard labor as previous generations were. Paulina lived not far from this building. At the Osteria del Fiat, I've asked for a quiet table. I'm disappointed when the host leads us to a very crowded dining room. We pass a large room with only one table of guests. In the circle of suited men, I recognize a retired local politician. In the dark recesses of the city, the power brokers don't like to be overheard. An hour later, after we have finished our own dinner, Bruno takes a large swig of the dolcetto d'alba we have been drinking. The obligatory pleasantries and the exchange of information about shared friends has been completed, and we can move on to the real meat of the dinner. I explain how Paulina had been accessing his employer's app over 50 times a day. At Italia app, we focus on returning traffic. Some readers we enchant with glamour, others we addict with fear. Isn't that manipulation? We are giving people what they want. If they want to hate, they will find it. If they want to love, they will find that too. What about promoting democracy and humanitarian values? That's just rhetoric for university students. You know that. Paulina Fiore died after gorging on fake news sent to her by Italia app. It's not our fault that someone can't handle online news. If we don't send it to them, someone else will. You have become very American in your thinking, I point out. It's disappointing my old friend can't see the world the same way we used to, but I've become resigned to accept people's differences, politically or otherwise. The police seem very interested in her social media history, I add. Bruno looks at me with renewed interest. Have the police opened an investigation? Maybe her death is not Italia app's fault. Maybe it's the people who write the fake news. If you can send me her browsing history, the one the police are going through, I'll take a look and put some spotlight on the fake news producers. That might keep you one step ahead in reacting to negative coverage. I'll keep your name out of it, of course. I'll think about it. Bruno focuses on his red wine glass. Bruno and I may not see eye to eye, but we have enough shared history to trust we will protect each other's best interests. The next afternoon, I receive Paulina's browsing history via an encrypted messaging app. I start clicking through the links. Italy's continuing flood of illegal immigrants. How COVID rises up through ventilation shafts. The 7 ways elevator buttons spread. Disease. Paparazzi capture pictures of Italy's first monkeypox patient. Vegetables in our supermarkets picked by immigrants inundated with monkeypox virus. I scan through months of links about deadly diseases and ways to avoid them. Fake news is a problem, and the government has been trying to combat it. In the thousands of links I scan through, my heart flutters as I spot our name. Don't trust what the government says about monkeypox. See attached articles from the Turin Register. Clicking the link, I see a list of familiar headlines. The dark hand behind the government reshuffle. Max Serafino. Patient malpractice allegations covered up by health authorities. Max Serafino. Pandemic recommendations. Misguided. Max Serafino. Corruption exposed in Turin government. Max Serafino. Other articles Paulina was reading, those not to trust doctors and government health advice, often linked to articles written by me and my colleagues. I stare at the pencil that sits on my desk where Giuseppe left it earlier. Behind me, I hear someone approach and feel their hands on my shoulders. Giuseppe's voice says, "And you thought you were superior to all of us, didn't you?" Is it all? I am about to ask an obvious question, but stop myself. I have bills to pay and a scarcity of other work alternatives. I sweep pointless self-doubt from my mind. Journalists report the news. We do not generate it. With a click of the mouse, I bring up today's police bulletin and make proposals on which events we might cover for our prestigious 137-year-old newspaper to the chief editor. The next morning, a young journalist who normally sits beside me struts triumphantly through the newsroom greeting colleagues. Giuseppe gives him a thumbs up. I open the Turin Register's most viewed list, an online article. Clickbait news causes scurvy in Italy's auto capital is trending across the nation. I begin having regular dinners with Bruno. We talk about our old adventures in school and about the state of the country. Bruno reminds me that a political science professor in university had taught us, every industry is selling a product, and at its core, the news industry sells fear. In the coming months, the number of cases of malnutrition, similar to Paulina's snowball across the nation. I notice Bruno starts to eat more and more. I have lost my appetite. Oh, mother, please send my father across. It was all a dream. Merle's breath, like rotten fish on top of her tongue. The balled-up, gray, dead mass of it settled at the back of her throat, like stale phlegm. His beady, stained tongue wriggling around on top of her tongue. His hand under her blouse, fumbling, scratching. His nails yellow and black and green. The sight of which made her vomit. His puss-filled, bandaged hand on top of her breast, the nail digging into her nipple, the dirt in his nails mixing with her blood. In her blood. The blood cool in the thick heat of the dark room, sweet, mixing with the scent of the vomit dried on the floor. She had dreamt it in the night, writhing like a dying fish, a pool of yellow sweat, unable to scream for all the phlegm in her throat, the fat tongue in her mouth, the eyes in the window. The eyes were from a long ago dream, black, a darkness darker than the black heat of the room. A self-eating darkness, turning inwards, two holes in the dark, like the memory of the snake's fangs on Amma's black skin. Two eyes watching her, watching itself. Two eyes, like holes in the heat. She could slip away like vapor, like smoke, like the silver mist over the river. The river, black in the night, black and shining, winking, winking like the silt around it, silver and loose, a million glinting eyes winking in the black night, the air ripe with the sour promise of raw mangoes, teasing and winking from the branches. Among them, the glinting brown eyes, cat-like of Muna, sitting on the branch naked, his long, cat-like body shining fluorescent, blue and violet. In the dark night, "Ladki," he whispered to her, "want a mango?" His words tinged with the stale scent of a biedi, fishy. In the river, there were fishes as small as a dot, dark and invisible, holes in the river, moving eyes. The big fish did not swim. They stared at her, their mouths sending a bubble up the surface of the water, which burst with a quiet pop, waiting for her answer. "Pop, pop, pop, Munia?" she asked. "Not ripe yet," Muna said, and laughed, revealing a scurvy mouth with wiggling teeth, like maggots. With each shake of the shoulder, a ha up and a he down, the teeth dropped down, raining like mangoes, too impatient, too ripe and restless, dropping with a pop, pop, pop. As they dropped and popped down, the night black rats gathered them up and scuttled away. An undulating, shadowy tide, whispering, an underground, mousy susurrus, like the restrained gossip, sisak, sisak, of the leaves in the night wind, conspiring. Amma had said it was rubbish, that the aam tree was spiritless, spirits having no cravings for the mango. It was all make-belief, just whispers, conspiring. But this changed when she saw Muna's body, the penis chopped off, dangling from the tree. And now he was sitting beside it, kicking it absent-mindedly once in a while, so that it went swinging, a sawan swing scene. Munia began to sing now, bellowing in the night, quiet. Amma, mere baba ko bhejori, ki sawan aya. Mother, please send my father across. Now the rains have come. And with her voice, the rains came down, quiet at first, trickling down her forehead, down her back, like sweat, mixing with the sweat into a vaporous headache. But soon, as Munia's bellowing grew more hysterical, stretched and cracked, the rain gained violence, sheets after sheets crashing down on the earth. Dum 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 da dum da dum dum. There was no song in this rain, nothing sacred, no rhythm, no melody. It was the roar of primeval war drums, the shanknad breaking out of the sky's raging core, bloodthirsty, furious. The mango trees were screaming in anguish as their branches convulsed, epileptic, suicidal, wanting to break free. But the roots unyielding, circling tighter and tighter around their ankles, cutting off the blood, then cutting into the skin, circling tighter and tighter till they were bleeding. They were bleeding and screaming. Their blood washed out by the rain. The earth was bleeding. Pools of blood, pools of filth running down the mango grove, running down the fields, running down the streets, running down to the river, running down. She looked at Munna, hanging on to the branch, swinging in the rain, the noose getting tighter and tighter, choking, screaming out into the rain. Ama, mere baya ko bejori. She knew that the flow of the dream, the black river, with the pop fish, with the mango carcasses, with the winking stars in its belligerent waters, was running down to the void, the shunya that was inside her, the void that she was made to cover with her sari and petticoat, her red bangles and black bindi, the red dye on her feet, and the toe rings which cut into her skin, the shunya that was a red field with Amma's corpse lying among the bent-down barley, the teeth-girdled void inside her stomach, as she watched her running towards the mango grove in her shit-stained sari, the blouse torn off, running to the branch that was no longer weighed down by Munna's incomplete body, the void that no Baba, no Bhai, no Mama could cross, a bottomless pit. What could Sawan do? The shunya spelled out by the noose around Munna's neck. The shunya Murli was trying to prod with his puss-filled fingers and his puss-filled organ. The shunya that was a dream, the void that was this dream that was a void, flowing, rushing down into the night, to where the black river came to a halt at the dried-up vomit puddle, out of which she emerged into the dark room once again. Her body felt slimy, putrid, a mix of semi-digested rice, sweat, and the rotten substance of death. Murli's hands pressed tight around her neck, and her neck gave away, turning to sludge. Murli bent down and licked it up, his tongue abrasive, spiky, leaving scars for flies to lay their eggs on. Her breath started to go, and she could hear the thrashing of her heart in her ear, but she repeated to the beat of her thumping heart, "It is all a dream, a dream, a dream." It was all a dream, but it wasn't hers alone. It also belonged to Amma. It was a dream passed on to her, the only dowry Amma could muster, her inheritance. The dream belonged to Munna too. It was the dream that Amma spun out in the thick heat of the dark room, spinning and spinning. the thread of her word laced with her saliva, the strings of saliva that would purse her lips as she kept mumbling in the dark, spinning, her words indecipherable, a chant, a plea crying out into the night. Munna, munna munia munia. It was the dream that Amma had spun out in the dark night, as the man whom they never called Baba filled the air of the room, humid with his sweaty appetite, heavy with his piggish grunts, filled it with the scent of his bidi, which would make Munia sick, filled it with the sight of gray tufts of hair pushing out of his ears, filled it with a heaviness that sat in their stomachs for days, stones in their chests, gray, a shame that stalked them and enwrapped them, entered their bodies, evacuated their innards, rendered their guts hollow, an all-consuming parasite, till they were all sludge, putrid and shameful, wobbly and shapeless, shadows, shunya, the dream that rose above this scent, these sounds, this heaviness, a light, weightless dream that her eyes caught a glimpse of as she had stood there watching, her two eyes glinting in the window. Outside the window, Munaya and her counting the teeth that they had found this week, buried in the silt around the river, buried in the sand like shells, hollow, heavy with the weight of their own insouciance, their own lack, a self-inflicted negligence dropping out of mouths and scuttering around in the sand. Sometimes they found worms inside them, pink and white and sometimes green. They compared the shapes that they found. Munia, claiming her, finds to be sharper, while she rubbed hers against her thumb till it turned raw, certain of their supremacy. Sometimes she kept them in her mouth, swirled them around, the taste of dirt, metallic, sour. She sucked at them, like at the stone of the Jaman. Now, Merle's teeth shifted around in her mouth, scuttling down her tongue into her throat, tasting of gutka and anger, scuttling down her body, digging, puncturing the skin from the catacombs. I open my bloodshot eyes and watch the shadows dance from the flickering torches hanging on the cold, dripping bricks. My legs and buttocks are numb, but I can't deny the annoying sensation coming from my right hallux. I see a pair of tiny red eyes looking up at me. My mind screams in silent terror as a piece of flesh is torn from just below my curved toenail. The rats are unrelenting in their quest for flesh. My long tenure in this malicious prison has eroded the cobblestone floor. Thick iron chains keep me anchored to the ground, and in this madness of delirium, not one soul can hear my screams. The moisture seeps into my skin, and words from my captors echo through my disillusioned conscience. You will beg for death in the end. For the past 2 years, my body has been rotting away, or at least, I think it's been that long. One tends to lose track of time when your freedom has been shackled. It's hard to discern reality from illusion. The mind creates walls to shield itself from unnecessary damage, but only after your psyche is shredded and hanging by a thread. Oh, the irony. I rub my lanky fingers down the ridges of my shirtless sternum until I reach the white, tattered rags tied around my bony hips. There, I find my salvation. A forgotten photograph the wretches missed during their extensive searches upon my arrival here. Seeing the brittle paper in the roaming light makes my lips curl upward. Ah, my beautiful Reina, her exquisite cocoa eyes pierce my soul, and her soft red lips ignite a fire in my heart. Those tender sparks of love have kept my lungs expanding. I extend my trembling index finger and stroke her long black hair. Her skin, a sparkling diamond in the darkness. I remember the first time I laid eyes on my beautiful Reina. She sat beside me in English literature when I attended the University of Boston. I dropped my pencil, and she graciously dipped down to grab it for me. When our eyes met, I knew she was the one. The peace I felt told my soul there was no other woman for me. It was like coming home to a warm hearth. My universe exploded into a trillion shining stars, and the best part, she felt it too. Our wedding was filled with family, friends, and happiness. We said our personal vows and cried a river of tears. When it rained at the reception, we couldn't wait to dance in the deluge. As the cool droplets soaked our clothes and flowed down our bodies, we were reborn as one. Alas, the conflicts of a raging war in the Middle East pulled me away from Reina when I was drafted by the military. We had our hopes set on having a baby, but those plans had to be postponed. Of course, Reina supported me all the way, but I didn't want to leave her side. The training I had to endure was difficult, but I found solace in Reina's love letters. I would receive one every week, and I, in turn, would send my love through the wire. We longed for the chaos to be over, so we could resume our lives. It was midwinter when the letters stopped through no fault of our own. I was placed on a secret mission with a group of 12 soldiers to infiltrate the enemy stronghold to seize top-secret files on a nuclear weapon. Everything was going smoothly until Captain Ziggy tripped an alarm on our way out of the complex. And needless to say, we were captured. I can imagine the pain and worry my dearest Reina had to deal with, because I felt it too. How many oceans has she cried? Sergeant Radagon tortured us for days and wanted to know why we were there and who we were working for. I wouldn't say a word, not even when they threatened to cut my tongue out. Thank goodness it didn't come to that, but I fear my time is running out. One by one, the cries of my fellow comrades grew silent until I was the last man standing. A second pair of elongated teeth biting my peripheral nerve remind me of the horrific reality I find myself in. I shuffle my feet and watch the mangy rodents scatter. I hear the weary sound of boots stomping toward me and take a deep, shuddering breath. A robust man with great authority steps into my view, holding a brown bowl and a lit torch. It's Sergeant Radagon. My dinner has arrived. Hungry Godwin, you'll need your strength to endure the pain to come, because I'm not finished with you yet. My questions will be answered. With that, the sweaty man tosses the bowl at me. The smell of molded oatmeal tickles my nostrils and makes my nose hairs retreat in defeat. My skin crawls like 1,000 insects searching for a new home. As Radagon leaves with a deep chuckle, I cup my hands and scoop what I can. The taste is horrible, but it will give me the energy to do what I must. I wait for darkness to come and know this from the stampede above my head. The guards are more active during the day. At night, they're all but absent. I glance at Raina's picture and remember the first time we kissed. We were walking at the Pittsburgh Zoo when Raina stumbled on a stray rock. I caught her before she hit the ground, and as our eyes met, we pressed our lips together. The planet's axis spun loose and found a new home in us. Those were happy times, and my soul aches for more precious memories. But there will be time for that later. Right now, I have work to do. I put her picture back into the rags they call my clothes, and wait. A sudden tickle disturbs my sleeping toes. The rats are back. I watch tiny red eyes and long whiskers flicker around my feet. When I feel teeth stab my skin, I lean forward and snatch the intruder with my bare hands. I hold the rat to the flickering light and wince at the terrified squeals. Well, my little friend, I'm sorry about this, but there is no other way. Crack! I snap the rat's neck and let the blood paint the shackles around my wrists. I've grown quite skinny, so all I needed was a little lubrication. After tossing the rodent to the side, I work my hands back and forth until I'm free from the bonds. I gently lay the lynx on the floor and stand. My joints pop like snapping twigs, but I ignore the pain. My muscles forgot what it was like to stand. The chains kept me anchored to the floor with little slack where I had to sleep in my own filth. The pain feels great. It reminds me I'm alive. In the corner of my eye, I see a rumbling mound growing in the dark corner. I reach to the wall and grab a torch. Casting a glow, I see 100 rats eating their fallen friend. They don't appreciate the light and hiss at me. "You nasty fiends!" I use the uneven bricks in the wall as a crutch until I reach a narrow corner. I realize now, more than ever, that this catacomb is a maze. The light reveals a horde of rats in every direction. How can there be so many? The smell of rotting flesh mixed with rancid sewage makes me vomit. I have my answer. The rodents are quick to clean up the mess, and I use the opportunity to move further into the abyss. About halfway down the corridor, the jugular veins in my neck throb in protest. The confined space spins to mock me, and my heart drops like a bowling ball. I close my eyes and reach for Raina's photo. Through the slits of my peripheral view, I see my angel. My mind ventures back to the first time we made love. We were nervous. The fact that we were saving ourselves for that moment still amazes me. I remember the warm blanket of peace and understanding that enveloped us. Our fears were eroded away, and even though we had no clue about what we were doing, our instincts and passions led the way. As we became one, that journey met a happy, climatic ending and marked the beginning of our sexual revolution. It was all about trust in ourselves and each other. I place Raina's picture back into my loincloth and smile. Through uncertain circumstances, we always find a way to keep going. We need to believe in ourselves. I must get back to her. With renewed motivation, I place one foot in front of the other and wobble through the wavy light. The rodents hound my every step. As long as the flame burns bright, the little monsters keep their distance. I weave through the dark labyrinth only to find more rats chewing on the carcasses of people who would never be identified. I wonder if any of them were my fellow soldiers. Rounding another bin, I hear a clanking sound and quickly discover a bald man anchored to the wall with boils all over his skin. Please, help me. I narrow my eyes and ask, "What's wrong with you? Are you diseased?" "No. I need the light to shine upon my skin once more, and all my ailments will be cured." I wave my torch up and down his flabby skin and see a spider burrow into one of the pustules. I take a few steps back and grab my heart. Good heavens, what madness is this? In my hasty retreat, I rush by another torch and inadvertently erase the flame. It was the only light shining on the plagued man. With the fire gone, I hear his screams first. "No! Get them off me! Help!" The sound of 100 scampering paws makes me cringe. As the rats eat the man's tarnished flesh, I turn away. and take no pleasure in this madness. My journey must continue. I whisk around another corner and see a dangling man with a hollow chest. I extend the torch and gasp. It's Captain Ziggy. He looks like he was left to starve to death. I poke his arm, and an army of hungry rats storm out from the hole in his sternum. I withdraw quickly and fumble for Raina's picture. I need her inspiration now more than ever. The memory of buying our house washes over my trembling mind. That small 2-story shack needed a lot of work, and I didn't want to bother with it. Raina told me the foundations were strong, and that's all that mattered. We worked hard to rebuild everything and made that place a home. It was a castle fitting for a king and queen. Faith, love, determination, hard work, and willpower were all we needed. I replace the keepsake with renewed vigor, bite my lower lip, and trudge on. After what seems like an endless journey, I stop when I see a staircase down a long, curvy hallway, bathed in light. It's the exit. A dozen skeleton bodies line the walls like Halloween decorations, and I wonder what wicked fate they must have encountered to deserve deaths like unrefined thirst. "Fresh squeezed today," the bartender said, slapping the husky steel barrel behind him. He smiled, his hollow features shadowed by the dim pendant lights over the bar. From his stool, Victor looked down the bar counter. He saw the males with their stark white shirts and freshly pressed slacks, shiny hair slicked neatly behind their ears. They mingled with flirtatious females, elegant dresses in midnight blues and wine-colored reds. The guests drank from cups. The liquid's rousing scent permeated the tavern. Victor's hands quivered as he watched them drink. Was it 3 days since he'd last had a sip? 4? The thirst boiled inside him, but discipline was paramount. He shook his head at the bartender. Cup of bubble water, raising an eyebrow. The bartender leaned in to meet Victor's gaze. "By the looks of you, you need a drink, lad. You're paler than the moon." Victor wasn't sure why he chose to make his abstinence difficult. When curing an addict, they say to make it easy. Remove all temptations. To enter the belly of the beast was self-restraint suicide. Perhaps it was to prove a point. If he could do it here, he could it anywhere. Maybe it was still too early in his sobriety, but he knew the cause was worth it. He had to do this. He had to know it could work. He shook his head again, tapped his fingers on the bar. "Please, just bubble water." The bartender's sunken eyes lingered. "You ain't one of those puritanicals, are you? Think you're all high and mighty by taking the pledge?" Victor tightened his jaw, opened his mouth to comment. But before the words left his lips, he caught himself. Breathe in, breathe out. That's the first lesson when dealing with temptation. Control your breath. He closed his eyes, breathed the metallic scent of the bar, the soft notes of a piano mixed with the steady chatter of the guests. A voice inside screamed for a drink, but he would choose not to listen. He was better than the carnal needs of his biology. He opened his eyes. I'm no puritanical, just someone requesting bubble water. Is that too much to ask? The bartender eyed him suspiciously. He poured a cup of bubble water, placed it in front of Victor. You know they ain't right, those puritanicals. We've been drinking it since the beginning of time. You think by abstaining, you're a better person. Like you're saving lives or something. I told you, Victor said, sipping his bubble water. I'm no puritanical, and that one there ain't a blend salesman. The bartender thumb gestured to a male at the end of the bar, chatting cocksure between two females. He wore the usual salesman attire, black suit and tie. Oxfords shined to a sheen. Behind sharp cheeks, he grinned, his milky teeth visible even in the muted light. The females grasped his arms on either side, giggled at his jokes with contrite. The scum of the earth, Victor thought. Big earners with mammoth egos. The blend salesmen were the antithesis of everything Victor stood for. All the work he had done to balance the scales, to build justice in the world. And all they cared about was the paycheck, the females, and satisfying their thirst. Them puritanicals ain't big fans of them blend salesmen, the bartender said. You don't look impressed with that one. Victor grimaced. He couldn't reveal his allegiance here. Who knew who could be listening? But in a moment of irritation, perhaps the abstinence was clouding his judgment. Perhaps he was exhausted from years of bickering with heartless morons. He lashed out. And what if I was one? What if I did take the pledge? The moment the words left his lips, he regretted it. A few bar patrons looked over. The bartender stepped back. As he rag-dried the hollow of a cup, he dissected Victor with his eyes. You would have to leave. Yes, sir. Ain't having none of your kind in here. You come to my bar, you drink the fresh squeeze. Victor looked at the stout steel drum, erected like a monument behind the bar. The keg tap was polished to a sparkle. He felt his innards squirm in discomfort. As loathsome as the contents were, the thirst intensified inside him. He pulled his eyes away. Tell you what, said the bartender. He lifted a cup, opened the keg tap, filled the cup to the brim with liquid. You have a sip of this, and you can stay. I know you ain't really one of them puritanicals. He placed the cup beside Victor's bubble water. Victor looked into the cup. The liquid sat in a delicious, dark pool. Willpower, he thought. You can do this. But the metallic scent flooding his nostrils was overbearing. A deep, primal lust took hold, and the thirst spoke within. just a sip. All the good you've done, you deserve one sip. Beads of sweat formed on his brow. The bar grew hot and stifling. He peeled his collared shirt from his skin. "I won't drink that," he whispered under his breath. The bartender leaned forward, placed both forearms on the bar. "You're sweating, lad. It's just a sip. It's in our genes, you know. We can't live without it." He nudged the cup forward so that it was under Victor's nose. The smell overpowered him, entranced him in a mesmerizing grip. The bar chatter dampened to a muffle. The piano's notes hollowed as if underwater. A haze blurred the periphery of his vision. It was just him and the cup, the dark liquid reaching with tempestuous hands. The thirst was shrieking, "Drink, drink, drink." Victor's hands shook uncontrollably. Discipline, he thought, his logical mind trying to override his thirst. You cannot control your environment, but you can control your choices. His hands were drawn forward like a stringed puppet. Inches from the cup, they shook harder, rattling like jackhammers. The thirst howled maddeningly. The compulsion was too great, the thirst too loud. His hands closed around the cup. Lifting it, he brought the screaming contents toward his lips, and then the bar door slammed open. A loud thud shook the room, and the cold night wind poured in. "Found one on the outskirts," a gruff voice said. Victor, along with the rest of the bar's guests, rotated on their stools to the open door. Two figures entered. The first was a husky male decorated head to toe in furs. Between two beady eyes, his nose protruded from his face like a crow's beak. The second was a human, dark hair matted over her face. Her hands were bound in front of her. She was naked, her body mud-caked. Through the thick grime that covered her face, skittish eyes flitted across the room. Kronos gripped her by the hair, dragged her roughly into the dim bar light. He kicked the back of her leg with a boot, and she fell to her knees. "Still room in the keg, Lonnie?" Kronos said, tugging at the woman's hair. Lonnie, the bartender, spread his arms wide. "Typhus, I see the night's hunt was successful. With guests are thirsty as ours, we will make room. Found her on the outskirts, you said?" "Aye, fiddling with our sunshades. Escaped from the juicing farm, this one. Sure smells like it. Is she marked?" "Left wrist." Traced her to old Galaban's farm. Lonnie laughed. "That old sack can't keep them in. I'm surprised the Regency hasn't shut him down." Typhus furrowed his brow. "Unfortunately so. Will be harder to find strays for the fresh squeeze." His eyes met the great steel barrel behind the bar. "Hard work for Typhus? Come now, have a drink, lad. You're in good company. And you've brought entertainment for the night." Bartender Lonnie gestured to the well-dressed patrons lining the bar counter. "Guests, See what our trapper Typhus has brought us. Lonnie's Tavern hires the best. Drinks and a show tonight. The guests at the bar muttered in agreement. Lonnie handed out fresh drinks from the keg. The pianist increased the tempo of their melody. The chatter in the bar amplified, buzzing voices mingling with clinking cups. Victor watched the salesman at the end of the bar drape his arms around the two females. As he whispered in their ears, they chortled with delight. Typhus dragged the dirt-caked human to a pole in the middle of the tavern. Dance of the damned. The dimly lit bar exuded an aura of faded elegance, the soft glow of neon lights casting a surreal ambiance over the audience, who sat in hushed anticipation. As the spotlight flickered to life, illuminating the makeshift stage at one end of the room, the murmurs of conversation died down, replaced by an air of eager expectation. As the curtains slowly parted, revealing the expanse of the stage, a solitary figure stood poised at its center, the ballerina, with a grace that seemed to transcend the earthly realm. The ballerina came to life as the first notes of the music filled the air. Her movements were a symphony of fluidity and precision, each step a testament to years of tireless dedication and unwavering discipline. Like a delicate flower swaying in the breeze, she floated across the stage, her every motion a masterpiece. Her arms moved languidly, weaving a tale of love and longing with each sweep and arc. She beckoned the audience into her world with each movement, inviting them to share her emotions. Poised and elegant, the ballerina commanded the stage with a commanding and serene presence. Her posture was flawless, her form a study in perfect alignment. She seemed to defy gravity, soaring effortlessly through the air with divine grace. Her footwork was a marvel to behold, each step executed with exquisite precision and grace. From the delicate steps to the lightning-fast turns, her movements were a testament to the strength and agility of the human body. The audience watched in awe as she leaped and twirled across the stage, her every movement a testament to the power of the human spirit. But beyond the technical prowess, the ballerina's ability to convey emotion captivated the audience. With each extension of her leg and each arch of her back, she imbued her performance with a depth of feeling that resonated with all who watched. From the depths of despair to the heights of ecstasy, her dance spoke to the universal human experience, transcending language and culture. The ballerina executed a series of mesmerizing turns that left the audience breathless. Spinning gracefully across the stage, she seemed to defy the laws of physics, her movements a blur of motion and light. But as the music swelled to its crescendo, and the time for her final bow arrived, A sudden sense of unease settled over the bar. With a flourish, the ballerina prepared to take her bow, her movements graceful and poised. But then disaster struck in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Inexplicably, she stumbled, her perfect balance faltering as she fell to the ground in a heap. Gasps of shock echoed through the bar as the audience watched in horror. But it was what happened next that genuinely chilled them to the bone. As the ballerina lay on the stage, everything around her seemed to shift and blur, as if reality was unraveling. The once vibrant colors of the stage faded to a dull, lifeless gray, and a sickening sense of dread hung heavy in the air. And then, from her wrists and ankles, blood began to flow, staining the stage crimson red. It pooled around her, a macabre tableau of horror and despair. With a sudden jerk, the ballerina rose to her feet, her movements jerky and unnatural. It was as if she were a marionette manipulated by unseen hands, her body moving in grotesque contortions that defied all logic and reason. The audience watched in stunned silence as the once graceful ballerina twisted and convulsed, her limbs bending at impossible angles. And then, with a horrifying realization, they understood what was happening. She was no longer in control of her own body. With each agonizing movement, it became clear that she was under control by some evil force, a dark presence that lurked unseen in the shadows. As she danced her final, nightmarish dance, the audience could only watch her twisted performance in helpless horror. They knew they were witnessing something more sinister than a dance. They saw the manifestation of pure, unadulterated evil, a force beyond comprehension that had seized control of the ballerina's soul. As the ballerina rose from the stage floor, her once graceful movements became grotesque spasms of pain and fear. With each jerky motion, her bones fractured and splintered, and the sickening sound of snapping echoed through the bar like a macabre symphony. Her limbs twisted at unnatural angles, each movement a torment of agony that etched lines of suffering onto her pale, sweat-drenched face. Her eyes, wide with terror, pleaded for release. Still, her mouth was closed by wire that had inexplicably wrapped around her lips, sealing them shut with cruel finality. Blood dripped from the small holes punctured by the wire, staining her pristine costume with crimson droplets. With each convulsion, her skin ripped, revealing raw, red flesh beneath. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and the sickening stench of decay, a suffocating fog that enveloped the stage in a shroud of horror. The audience watched in horrified fascination as the ballerina's body contorted and twisted, her movements growing more frantic and erratic with each passing moment. It was as if she looked torn apart from the inside out. Blood rain. It wasn't the red aliens that were the problem. It was the voodoo high priests that caused all the mischief. Monkey hands, parrot beaks, and baboon skulls were one thing. But when the blood rains came, all of the usual cons kicked into high gear. The mantis-like, spindly red alien surveyed my vegetables with an air of fascination. He stopped on the okra, holding up a stalk and studying it. He was dressed in ripped whitewashed jeans and a Blink 182 t-shirt. But behind his disguise was a standard silver spandex jumpsuit, like they all wore when they came into town to creep around. Whatever else you could say about the red aliens, they were creepers by nature, with no sense of boundaries. I just wanted him to move along. I clenched a final notice of foreclosure auction in my hand, as if taking out my anger on the paper would save the family ranch. Yahya Gabon took the deed to our ranch in foreclosure. Yahya was a cattle herder, but before that, he had been a TAF general and still had pull with the government. Yahya was hard, implacable, unyielding, a real monster. Yahya once shot and killed a 6-year-old boy playing in his grazing pastures while the child begged for his life. The laws allowed one to protect their land from intruders. When asked why he'd done it, Yahya had said, "The signs on the perimeter say, 'Stay out, trespassers shot on sight.' Wouldn't mean nothing if I didn't follow through." The Police Nacional who had questioned him said, "Yahya, the kid was illiterate. Guess he should have paid more attention in school." Yahya had said. The way Yahya looked at it was, when he set his eye on what's yours, it was his if he could find a way to take it from you. Uncle Kofi was missing an eye from turning the other cheek in a fight as a boy. But the rock in the other kid's hand had landed just right and shot the eyeball clean out. Uncle Kofi was a pacifist who wouldn't even swat a mosquito. So this was no contest. I had told Uncle Kofi we should just give up the ranch. We couldn't afford it. But Uncle Kofi was superstitious. He believed that fate could be wooed. A few weeks earlier, I had gone with Uncle Kofi to the Ako Desawa fetish market and met with Guédenon Benoit, the voodoo man. We entered his office, as he called it, which was a hut with a square-framed doorway lined with human skulls that looked like a no-frills mine shaft leading into a catacomb. The standing air inside was stiff, musky, and moist. The walls of the inner chamber were filled with the dried heads of dogs, monkeys, birds, snakes, and every imaginable living thing you could think of. You could almost hear the animal sounds echo from the clay walls. Uncle Kofi gasped at the abundance of spirits filling this hovel. I did not share his sense of wonder. I joked to myself, internally, that this was the great roadkill emporium of Lomé. "Here it is," Guédenon said, his rounded jowl stubbled with patches of white, and his bald head shining from the torchlight. The basket was filled with little dried chameleons, with their helmet-shaped heads adorned with horns and bony lumps, like modern-day dinosaurs. It smelled like furry jerky, dried in the humid, tropical breeze. Yes, here we are. After putting a handful of chameleons in a basket, Guédenon gathered a handful of dried parrots, each withered down to the size of a famished mouse. "Now, to change your luck, you will grind up the chameleon and grind up the parrot." Guédenon depicted the grinding while he spoke, taking up a pewter bowl and mallet to make the demonstration, the torchlight reflecting off his bald forehead. "You will mix this with soap and bathe yourself in it. Do this 2 times a day. 3 days, not a day more, not a day less." Uncle Kofi tapped Guédenon on the shoulder while he looked for some other nonsense to sell us. "Did you hear about the lullaby? You mean about the strangers whose minds could not be read? They were talking about these totems at the village gates by our farm that look like men sitting cross-legged, with arms extruded, and heads of black tar, with seashells for eyes. The guardians, or Dulaba, are supposed to be able to scan the minds of foreigners entering the village, to discern if they have ill intent. I heard that the Westerners, the lanky ones, who appeared before the blood rains, I heard that none of the priests could discern their purpose from the Duleba, Uncle Coffee said. "It is true," Guédenon told him. I wanted to scream. "They are red aliens, you moron." No one knows what they want. But I couldn't say anything, or I'd be committed. I was the only one who could see them ever since I was a child. I had been hiking on Mont Agu, exploring its ridges, when I saw a light in the mist and stumbled upon their cliffside observatory. Normally, it was cloaked, but something about the vapors in the mist had screwed with the effect, did something to the light. When I walked into what looked like a temple from the outside, I saw a screen wrapping around the length of the chamber in a semicircle. Large, spindly red, mantis-like creatures with 4 legs on their hind parts were engrossed in the readings and images on their screens, tapping away with long, bony fingers on the consoles in front of them. One of them turned its hooded eyes and triangular face in my direction and screamed, the pincers on the sides of its mouth flaring in fright. A group of them rushed toward me. I shielded my face, but they were not violent. That was when they gave me the scarab beetle amulet that allowed me to recognize them despite their cloaking tech and explained to me about the bright blue marble we inhabit. They said, "It is not that Earth is special. There are plenty of habitable worlds with natural wonders. It is the size of the moon that counts. Our mission is to scan the cosmos to find other worlds that can host life. Other worlds with just the right size of moon." I had pressed the aliens as to why this was the case, and they had elaborated and explained everything in great detail, but I couldn't understand much of it. The only worlds that host life are those worlds with a moon that is just the right size to create a total solar eclipse, one of the red aliens said. And once that sacred syzygy goes out of balance, or is disrupted, life moves on. I had asked why they didn't just place moons around any planets with the right characteristics. He said, "There is a directive against playing God. Each civilization rises and falls on its own merits. When the time comes, a people either mature and venture out from their home or are snuffed out." It sounded dramatic back then, but these days, I don't know that a fair judge would deem us worthy of salvation, least of all us Togolese, who were forever finding reasons to kill and brutalize one another. The red aliens come from a sad, timeless dimension, much like Togo. On their world, there are tiny microbes in the soil that cover everything in shades of red. The microbes are in the air, the soil, the water, and can lay dormant for centuries, which is what is causing the blood rains. So much of this stuff is filtered out of the observatory that when they are here, they are literally pumping red dye into the clouds, day in and day out. In Togo, the next calamity is always waiting right around the corner, and word travels fast in Lomé. To stir people into a panic only takes the smallest of rumors. Strange lights flashing around Mont Agu. Tall, spindly men in strange clothing, loitering in the market. Match that up with omens like blood rain and a lunar eclipse, and the entire populace was stewing with anxiety and murmuring up a storm. Especially Uncle Coffee. It was great for the priests. But you know what terror and intrigue is bad for? Selling vegetables and fattening cows, and for all of the divination and soothsaying about how the bloodshed of decades gone by would be punished unless the land was purified. How those cries reaching to heaven would compel the Almighty to blot out the sun. Despite all of that, all this voodoo accomplished was to tear into old wounds and inspire fresh political violence. Everyone in the suburban villages and the slums blamed someone for their troubles and sought protection or aid from the priests. The radicals blamed the Union Party and the rich Kabylie tribe for subjugating the masses and censoring speech. For this and for that, and prayed for their downfall. The Union Party blamed the radicals for deceiving the public with lies and doubled down on censorship. And the disputes were much the same in the suburbs. Each side thought the other evil. Each side saw the issue as one-sided, good versus evil. In a way, each side was right, and each side was wrong, and our people, splintered in 1,000 factions, with no unifying principle, pointed fingers at each other, much the same as our governors did, and old feuds spilled out into bloodshed. And Yahya had sent a man to tell Uncle Kofi he'd be coming to the ranch the next day, and it was time we cleared out. I gripped the crumpled notice in a tight fist and looked up at the stranger, the red alien at my vegetable stall in the Lomé Grand Market, grabbed one of my best okra plants and gave it a once-over, not knowing I could see through his disguise. "How much for one of these?" he asked in French. "Why are you here?" "I am looking for vegetables to thicken a stew." "Cut the shit," I said. "We've been having blood rain for the past 2 months." The red alien laughed heartily. "It's just from dust kicked up into the atmosphere from a dust storm. For 2 months? Dust doesn't take 2 months to settle. Maybe it is some kind of algae, like a red tide. It stained all my white clothes. It burned the leaves off the trees. People are using it to tattoo skin." "What do you think it is?" "I know what it is. Red alien bugs. What else?" His buggy eyes bulged, and his forehead furrowed. Then he settled into realization. "You're her. You're Dora Igwe. Dora the Explorer. The one who found us, in the flesh. Do you want to come watch the eclipse with us?" "Why would I do that?" "It is an important celestial event. No disrespect. But it gets dark once a day. It's called night. I really don't get the novelty." "You wouldn't, would you?" "I guess it's like the suddenness of the enveloping darkness. It is metaphorical. Sometimes, you know, it is later than you think." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know, your people believe that war and bloodshed are like a virus, that it infects even the sun and the moon. And when the sun and moon get to quarreling, that brings about the eclipse, a final warning to change your ways." Those are just Batamaliba folk stories. They say the first mothers, Puka Puka and Kuyekok, told the villagers that the darkening of the sun was a warning to make amends for old feuds and live in peace, and the light will return. You are a spacefaring team of scientific explorers. You know this is an astrological, mathematical event. It has nothing to do with violence. Don't be so sure, child. There is much you do not understand. As the red alien turned and walked up the long, dusty road to the forest switchbacks, he turned and said, "Come watch with us, if you want." In the observatory, we waited for the eclipse. The red aliens were frantic. The one from earlier, who I'd nicknamed Tommy, took the controls and lifted the ship to a hover. "We've got to find a better vantage point," he said, as the ship floated through the Tongolese countryside outside Lomé. I could feel the eerie shadow chasing us down. The sky was full of fast-moving clouds, and a low mist hung to the valley floor, slinking down the mountain slopes and resting on the fields. The ship came to rest in Yahya's grazing lands, and the moon obstructed the sun. The red aliens gasped with a sound like the whistling of the wind. Like I said, though, I'm not superstitious. The whole thing seemed a bit overblown to me, but there it was, the total eclipse. A black orb with the faintest halo of red, set against a black, overcast, and moonless sky. Tommy turned to another red alien, who I'd known for years, and had nicknamed Freddy, and said, "The satellite has started moving too close. It is only a matter of time now. Isn't everything?" Freddy asked. "Hey, what is he talking about?" I asked. "Don't you worry, child," Freddy said. "When the time has come, it will all happen very quickly. She doesn't know we are here for the moon," Tommy blurted out. "It is just the right size for the colony in HD 1106-7, Freddy said. Freddy made a gesture to shush him. But it was too late. I had heard it. So, for all our worries about our earthly disputes, this was what the end of the world looked like. At least I wouldn't end up being homeless. That had been the thought I'd been obsessing over for days. I went to look out the back window, and it was just like Freddy had said. It was coming quickly. Yahya was in the cab, rolling the excavator toward the ship, and the dipper and bucket were swinging down and about to crash through the ceiling. The sound was deafening. Shards of metal and other materials rained down. Wires and diodes and mechanical pieces pelted our heads and the ground. The red aliens shrieked. Tommy was holding Freddy like a kid in a theater caught with an unexpected jump scare. I ran out in the fields, under the dark, moonless sky. Yahya raised the bucket over and over, caving in the roof of the ship and tearing huge chunks of the fuselage out into his fields. Yahya was smoking a Cuban cigar, and I could hear him yelling, "Serves you right. Trespassers." I guess a similar thing would happen soon to our ranch house, in the family for 5 generations. Maybe the barn, too. That seemed to be the way of things, to tear down the old to make way for the new. Especially here in Togo. Tommy made it out of the ship, only to be met by the blast of a shotgun. "Got one," Yahya shouted. I just watched, frozen. The blast tore Tommy's torso nearly in half, felling him. The blood poured and oozed out onto the dark fields. The pool of blood was red, just like ours. I guess, however different we are on the outside, maybe all living things bleed red. We are a thirsty bunch, the living hungering after that red nectar, to stir it, to shed it, to pool it, and collect it. Then Yahya turned to me and pointed the shotgun at my face. "Run," he said. "Get off my land." And I ran. through the pitch-dark fields, in the cool of the eclipse, crying as I waited for a gunshot that never came. Yahya yelled after me, "Enjoy your home while you can. I'll be coming for it." And he laughed, a bellowing stomach laugh, an eerie, chortling, bone-chilling laugh, inevitable, unquenchable, soulless. And as I ran, tripping on rocks, legs cut by tall grasses, I saw sirens in the night. At least 12 SUVs, the Gendarmerie Nationales, the National Guard. They were coming for Yahya, alerted by the gunshots and the carnage. A tall, friendly Fed with a pock-marked face jumped out of one of the vehicles and tried to grab me. "It's okay now. We've got this," he said. But I wrestled away from him. As I made it to the clearing and the dirt road, I dared a glance back at the haloed specter of the eclipse. I hoped Uncle Kofi would be back at the kitchen table, waiting for me with some vegetable soup, blissfully impervious to the warring entities ravaging our lands. Plight at the museum. The car's tires skidded over the rain-wet road, squealing in the night. Edward Reiki gritted his teeth. He didn't like driving this fast, but the situation called for it. This had been the first night after changing the museum's exhibits, his first actual decision on the job. At midnight, he'd gotten a call. The motion sensor alarms had detected someone inside the building. Someone had broken in. What a disaster. He gripped the steering wheel in a white-knuckle grip and fought to keep control of his 2-ton beast. Bernhelm Museum's windows glinted in his headlights like a cat's eyes in the dark. No lights were on. The place lay in shadow. The multi-story building sat still. The alarm's bleat rose over the roar of the rain and the car's rumble. Seeing the place with black eyes whilst the alarm squealed made Edward's stomach shrivel. He wished he had someone else with him now. He had goosebumps. Hell, he'd even take the previous curator, Stanley Graham's. Stanley had lost a few of his marbles as he'd aged. He'd covered the museum walls with paintings of cute puppies and kittens. Puppies and kittens only had a place in a museum if they were the early pets of cave people. Stanley had also left him a note. "Dear Edward, there is something you should know about the Bernhelm Museum. You see, there is life in the pain." Stanley had not managed to write beyond that. The word ended in a ragged scratch as the pen flew off the page. The heart attack had ended Stanley's capacity to use words, breathe, or pump blood. Edward assumed the guy was trying to tell him something about getting old, but he'd been unable to figure it out yet. It might not even mean anything. The man was a few sandwiches shy of a picnic. Edward killed the engine and dashed through the rain to the museum's open mouth. He held the collar of his jacket over his head as he ran to try to keep the torrent at bay. Edward tested the front door. It didn't budge. Whoever it was, they had not broken in through here or through any of the front windows. Edward fished the key out of his pocket, shivering as his shoes filled with water, and opened the door. Inside, the rain quieted down to a steady hiss. The alarm's bleat was much louder in here. A potent, earthy smell permeated the air. Edward rumpled his nose and raised his hands to his ears. Where was the damn thing? He knew it was around here somewhere. He fumbled in the dark, slapping the fob of his keys against the wall. This task was so much easier in daylight. At last, he found the alarm box, and some magic from the fob silenced the screech. He sighed, his ears thanking him for ending their torment. The darkened halls of the museum waited for him in silence. A low rumble of thunder vibrated through the floor beneath his feet for a very long time. A resounding thump, like that of a gun, echoed down the corridors. The blood turned to ice in his veins. Yes, there was somebody else here with him. Here, in his home, away from home, inside his dream. How dare they? It hurt his soul. When he was a boy, his grandfather had taken him to a natural history museum. The cave dwellers and their early tools had ignited wonder. The fossils and dinosaur bones had cast a magic. The Tyrannosaurus, Rex, mammoths, and megalodons had inspired terror and admiration. Edward wanted only to share the same awe he'd felt the first time. It was an honorable goal. There was an obvious way to achieve this. He had to be the best museum curator ever, but one thing had stood in his way, at least until now. He always started afresh. He came in, did away with the old, and swept in with the new. Edward couldn't stand to leave something standing that wasn't his. It didn't matter whether it worked. He discarded functional systems and inadequate systems. Unfortunately, such an attitude did not make him many friends. And so, he'd bounced around from museum to museum, never quite reaching the desired position. But now, he was Bernhelm Museum's curator. He'd realized his lifelong ambition. At last, after so much struggle, and now this? Youngsters and drug-addled maniacs breaking in, with their spray paints and their broken bottles of beer and their, good God, used condoms. This place was his, and he wasn't about to hand it over to some hooligans or street urchins pulling a prank. Edward scowled and closed the door behind him and locked it. He hit the lights and called out to the intruders. "It's too late to escape," he said. "The police are already on their way." A lie. "You never should have come here." A high-pitched coughing sound bounced around the building. It came from many places at once, back and forth. Edward's eyes widened. There were many criminals in here, and they were laughing at him. Shaking, he clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms, and marched into the museum. It took him longer than it should have to notice what was wrong with his exhibits. The paintings were empty. Jaw hanging down to his chest, Edward stumbled to a halt. He squinted at a painting that had, until tonight, held a picture of a mariner of Innsmouth. I write this now from a hospital bed not far from my hometown. Though I am labeled delirious and force-fed medications whose names I cannot pronounce, do not believe that this testament is anything other than truth. It was 2 days ago, several miles away from the outer shelf reefs from the coast, when I was aboard a sailboat that drifted seemingly aimlessly over the waves. As the setting sun reflected its vibrant hue on the lapping crests, I, the schooner's sole passenger, leaned against a railing as I stared out across the waters. My name is Howard Phillips, and I was out on this solo sailing journey to find a new clarity in life. 3 days before was my father's funeral. My relationship with my father was a perplexing one. I looked up to and admired the man, but felt like I never really knew him too well. I found myself wondering about the conversations that would never be had, the beers never drank together, the lessons and the stories that would never be taught or told. After the funeral, I had expected to feel some clarity and peace, but instead found only distraught and confusion. And I now often wonder about my own life and where it could lead. I was left this small sailboat in the Will, and I found it a sign of what to do next, and without a second thought, put everything else on hold, loaded up the boat, and sailed off into the unknown with the belief that I myself could be known. Now, with the currents pulling me ever outward from land, I treated this as an autopilot for the craft as I stared in a yearning way into the waters below. I watched as I saw a small school of fish swim by. Though I could not identify their breed, I mused at the occasional scaled adventurer who would jump from the water away from their brethren as they tasted the open air and observed a whole new, alien world. I admired these displays and began to wonder if this was some metaphor from the universe I was meant to see, some natural guidance on my own mission for self-discovery. As I watched the fish surface to dance above the cresting waves, I felt I caught a glimpse of something further ahead in the water. It seemed like 2 orbs of crimson, as if 2 eyes were staring at me from below. But when I scanned the waters to better see these supposed eyes, they were nowhere to be found. I supposed whatever bigger fish they belonged to had swum away. Or, more practically, it was a trick of the light of the setting sun. As it distortedly emulated back to me, I shrugged away from the shimmering vision and turned to face the mast. As I did so, I saw a large onyx storm cloud approaching fast in the distance. I rushed to the wheel, yet was too late as the rushing gales moved at a seemingly supernatural speed, enclosing on and whirling the small boat in all directions as my vessel lurched aggressively to and fro. My only option was to cling to the railing for fear of losing myself to the now crushing waves which hurled against the sides of the sailboat like slapping tentacles of a great kraken. The schooner broached and was nearly knocked down. As I was raised into the air, I looked down at the opposite end of the boat and saw that the mast was nearly parallel to the water. I then peered into what I believed to be the murky depths below, except that, with a flash of thunder, there appeared to be land not far below me. With that quick blaze of light, I witnessed an unending plain of putrid mud, amassed with the carcasses of decaying fish and horridly foul, less describable things protruding from the sludge. I thought I would feel relief by knowing there was land not far below should I capsize, but instead, an even stronger fear gripped me, a primal fear that whispered in my heart of the unknown horrors hidden beneath the waves, as the unknown, lurking darkness between the spaces of rot and decay beckoned for I to join it in eternity. I witnessed and experienced all of this and more in that split second in the boat's rocking, in that short burst of illumination. But now the ship had leveled out and rode the waves on the merciless winds, whose howls in my ears sounded more like mournful ghosts of all the lost sailors who fell to their watery graves in all the histories of man who came before me. On the horizon, I saw once again those dark crimson orbs from before, though now they rose from the waves instead of hiding beneath them, with churning waters to mark its rise to the surface. The thing slid into view above the dark waters. Those soulless eyes sat as two windows of malice against the face of a towering loathsomeness as it rose to face me. Two monstrous, scaly arms rose to cast in my direction. I turned my face and cowered in a squat huddle against my forlorn vessel, unable to hold my gaze upon the Goliath for fear of losing hold of my sanity. With my eyes squeezed shut and my whole self trembling, I prayed for release from the Leviathan's wake. The sailboat lurched again, this time with such force that I was knocked into the air and hurtled into the water. I felt the unsettling sensation of the sludged mire below, the masses of decay and putrid remains pouring over and surrounding me as I sunk deeper into the concoction of fetid slime and rotted scales which cut deep in my skin. I felt it seep into my nostrils and under my eyelids, and the groping carcasses felt like an incalculable sum of vengeful hands gripping me, pulling me deeper and deeper still into my shallow grave. My consciousness faded, and all went into nothingness around me. That's when I awoke next in a hospital near the coast. I don't know how I escaped, or what became of my father's boat. I only know I was found washed ashore, bruised and littered with abrasions. But I was alive. As I lay on my hospital bed, with no company but the memory of that nightmarish storm, I realized I had found the clarity for which I had set sail, though it was a clarity I would wish on no one, and wish only that we all could remain in our blissful ignorance of the truth. The truth that, as men, our place in this world is that of mere playthings on a board of cosmic proportions for being far beyond mortal comprehension. That the storm that man finds themselves trapped within is at the whims of those who rise from the deep. When I was aboard a sailboat that drifted seemingly aimlessly over the waves, as the setting sun reflected its vibrant hue on the lapping crests, I, the schooner's sole passenger, leaned against a railing as I stared out across the waters. My name is Howard Phillips, and I was out on this solo sailing journey to find a new clarity in life. 3 days before was my father's funeral. My relationship with my father was a perplexing one. I looked up to and admired the man, but felt like I never really knew him too well. I found myself wondering about the conversations that would never be had, the beers never drank together, the lessons and the stories that would never be taught or told. After the funeral, I had expected to feel some clarity and peace, but instead found only distraught and confusion. And I now often wonder about my own life and where it could lead. I was left this small sailboat in the Will, and I found it a sign of what to do next, and without a second thought, put everything else on hold, loaded up the boat, and sailed off into the unknown with the belief that I myself could be known. Now, with the currents pulling me ever outward from land, I treated this as an autopilot for the craft, as I stared in a yearning way into the waters below. I watched as I saw a small school of fish swim by. Though I could not identify their breed, I mused at the occasional scaled adventurer who would jump from the water away from their brethren as they tasted the open air and observed a whole new, alien world. I admired these displays and began to wonder if this was some metaphor from the universe I was meant to see, some natural guidance on my own mission for self-discovery. As I watched the fish surface to dance above the cresting waves, I felt I caught a glimpse of something further ahead in the water. It seemed like 2 orbs of crimson, as if 2 eyes were staring at me from below. But when I scanned the waters to better see these supposed eyes, they were nowhere to be found. I supposed Whatever bigger fish they belonged to had swum away. Or, more practically, it was a trick of the light of the setting sun. As it distortedly emulated back to me, I shrugged away from the shimmering vision and turned to face the mast. As I did so, I saw a large onyx storm cloud approaching fast in the distance. I rushed to the wheel, yet was too late as the rushing gales moved at a seemingly supernatural speed, enclosing on and whirling the small boat in all directions as my vessel lurched aggressively to and fro. My only option was to cling to the railing for fear of losing myself to the now crushing waves which hurled against the sides of the sailboat like slapping tentacles of a great kraken. The schooner broached and was nearly knocked down. As I was raised into the air, I looked down at the opposite end of the boat and saw that the mast was nearly parallel to the water. I then peered into what I believed to be the murky depths below, except that, with a flash of thunder, there appeared to be land not far below me. With that quick blaze of light, I witnessed an unending plain of putrid mud, amassed with the carcasses of decaying fish and horridly foul, less describable things protruding from the sludge. I thought I would feel relief by knowing there was land not far below should I capsize. But instead, an even stronger fear gripped me, a primal fear that whispered in my heart of the unknown horrors hidden beneath the waves. As the unknown, lurking darkness between the spaces of rot and decay beckoned for I to join it in eternity. I witnessed and experienced all of this and more in that split second in the boat's rocking, in that short burst of illumination. But now the ship had leveled out and rode the waves on the merciless winds, whose howls in my ears sounded more like mournful ghosts of all the lost sailors who fell to their watery graves in all the histories of man who came before me. On the horizon, I saw once again those dark crimson orbs from before, though now they rose from the waves instead of hiding beneath them, with churning waters to mark its rise to the surface. The thing slid into view above the dark waters. Those soulless eyes sat as two windows of malice against the face of a towering loathsomeness as it rose to face me. Two monstrous, scaly arms rose to cast in my direction. I turned my face and cowered in a squat huddle against my forlorn vessel, unable to hold my gaze upon the Goliath for fear of losing hold of my sanity. With my eyes squeezed shut and my whole self trembling, I prayed for release from the Leviathan's wake. The sailboat lurched again, this time with such force that I was knocked into the air and hurtled into the water. I felt the unsettling sensation of the sludged mire below. The masses of decay and putrid remains pouring over and surrounding me as I sunk deeper into the concoction of fetid slime and rotted scales which cut deep in my skin. I felt it seep into my nostrils and under my eyelids, and the groping carcasses felt like an incalculable sum of vengeful hands gripping me, pulling me deeper and deeper still into my shallow grave. My consciousness faded, and all went into nothingness around me. That's when I awoke next in a hospital near the coast. I don't know how I escaped, or what became of my father's boat. I only know I was found washed ashore, bruised and littered with abrasions. But I was alive. As I lay on my hospital bed, with no company but the memory of that nightmarish storm, I realized I had found the clarity for which I had set sail, though it was a clarity I would wish on no one, and wish only that we all could remain in our blissful ignorance of the truth. The truth that, as men, our place in this world is that of mere playthings on a board of cosmic proportions for being far beyond mortal comprehension, that the storm that man finds themselves trapped within is at the whims of those who rise from the deep. When I was aboard a sailboat that drifted seemingly aimlessly over the waves, as the setting sun reflected its vibrant hue on the lapping crests, I, the schooner's sole passenger, leaned against a railing as I